Today's episode is brought to you by Squarespace. Squarespace is the easiest way to create a beautiful website, blog, or online store for you and your ideas. Squarespace features an elegant interface, beautiful templates, and incredible 24/7 customer support. Try Squarespace today. Go to squarespace.com and enter offer code SMART at checkout to get 10% off. Squarespace. Build it beautiful.
The podcast where we talk to smart people, but not necessarily done by smart people.
That is an awesome question.
This one goes down probably on one of my top 5.
Hey, I like nutrition. I like to eat food.
This is the coolest thing ever. We're going to do this forever.
I wish I paid more attention in that class.
You know, I'm going to be honest, I don't understand that. As a man, I don't get it.
Welcome to smartpeoplepodcast.com.
Hello and welcome to Smart People Podcast, conversations that satisfy your curious mind. This week we talk with a guest who has truly done some remarkable things during his life. He was a graduate of Stanford University and Cornell Law School. He's a vegan ultra-endurance athlete, motivational speaker, author, husband, father of 4 children, and just an overall great example of healthy living. Our guest this week is Rich Roll. Rich is the author of books like Finding Ultra, Rejecting Middle Age, Becoming One of the World's Fittest Men, and Discovering Myself, and his newest book, The Plant Power Way, Whole Food Plant-Based Recipes and Guidance for the Whole Family. Rich's interview is great because he focuses on authenticity, and that's something that I think we should all definitely try to focus more on in our lives. Before we jump into the interview, I wanted to remind you to head over to iTunes and Stitcher and leave a rating and review for the show. That really does help out the podcast, and we truly do appreciate it when you take a few moments out of your day to do so. Another easy way to support the show at no cost to you is using our Amazon link at smartpeoplepodcast.com/Amazon. Using the link sends you to Amazon just as you normally would. You do your shopping, and we get a nice little kickback from Amazon, again, at no cost to you. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and wrap up this intro so that you guys can get onto the fantastic interview with Rich Roll.
All right, Rich. Well, thanks so much for being on the show. Really appreciate it. As I mentioned there a minute ago, I found you through your writing, specifically the article, Why You Should Stop Life Hacking and Invest in the Journey. And I want to get into that. But before we talk about that, you have a very interesting background, which the listeners love to hear about. You went to Stanford undergrad, Cornell Law School. So you've obviously always been an overachiever. Is that a fair assumption?
I don't know. I guess maybe for better or worse. I've gotten into some trouble as well. I think a more apt description might be somebody who's kind of prone to extremes. When I get into something, I kind of go all the way, and sometimes that serves me. It served me academically, and it served me in sport. But it also that pendulum swings in the other direction as well.
I completely understand that. Like sometimes, do people say it's an addictive personality?
I think you could definitely make that statement about myself. I'm a recovering alcoholic, and it's a big part of kind of my story and my journey. And so balance for me is kind of this fickle lover that I'm always pursuing and not quite able to covet.
Yeah, no, I can understand that. From the time I was little, my parents always used to say my motto would be in life, anything worth doing is worth overdoing. I mean, from, the good things to the bad things, like salt even, so.
Right.
So, and then you practiced law for a while, which I have never met a happy lawyer. So I'd love to hear your take on that, what it was like to be a lawyer. Did you enjoy it? Did you want to jump out a window?
Probably most days I wanted to jump out of a window. I would say that I enjoyed law school, and I enjoyed college. I enjoyed the academic challenge of it, but I didn't go to law school because I had a passion for law. I went to law school because it just seemed like a good thing to do or a responsible thing to do. And kind of part of my message and my story and my journey is really about trying to impress upon people the importance of of doing the inside work, the interior work, of trying to really connect with who you are and tap into and discover and unlock and embrace, that thing that you're passionate about, particularly when you're young, and to try to invest in that. And, I didn't do that. What I did was do the thing that I thought, society would smile upon me for doing. And I was successful at it. And I could have continued and been, a partner in a big prestigious law firm and made a bunch of money and all that kind of stuff. But it really was not for me. And I had to kind of pursue it until I was in so much pain that it became unbearable, before I was willing to kind of course correct and change directions in my life. And, certainly there are people out there that love practicing law, and I know lots of amazing, dynamic individuals who enjoy the practice of law, and more power to them. It just was not, for me, it was always like jamming a square peg into a round hole.
Absolutely. And I mean, we won't go into it because the listeners have heard me talk about my story before, but it's extremely similar. Rather than law, it was in finance. And almost mirrored your journey to a T. And I wanted to say, you stuck with it, you said, until it hurt so much. And that was the same thing with me. What was this kind of the moment? That's it, because you went from law, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but to what you do now, which is, you're an endurance athlete, you have a book, podcast, but things based around this, authenticity and, get out there, just exuberance, passion. What was it that one day you said, man, F it, like, I'm out of here. Let's do this.
Right. I mean, in retrospect, it all looks like it happened overnight. And in reality, it wasn't like that, like most things. It's easy to spin kind of a tidy narrative around kind of this, overnight, complete overhaul of my, professional career. But it was a slow transition. And for me, back to kind of the addictive personality, I mean, pain really is the only thing that's ever motivated me to kind of change my errant ways or my behavior patterns. And what happened to me was, like I referenced earlier, I got into a lot of trouble with alcoholism. And, I was in a pretty desperate state around the time I was 31. And of course, I knew I was an alcoholic, and I tried many, many times to stop and to quit. And I would inevitably always relapse. And at the end, I was drinking around the clock, and, I couldn't leave my house without a vodka tonic in the shower. And it was horrible. It was a desperate, dark, lonely place where, I was on the verge of unemployment, alienated from my friends and family, sleeping on a bare mattress in an empty apartment, and clinging on to this job that I was on the precipice of losing at any minute. And one day I woke up and, had that moment of clarity that you hear about with other recovering alcoholics and addicts, and realized that, I really needed to change the way that I was living. And that denial snapped, and I was able to kind of surrender to the problem and surrender to the solution and accept help and solicit help. And I ended up going to rehab, and I was in rehab for 100 days. And, it's all kind of, it's very Hollywood to talk about, going to rehab. But the truth of the matter is that, rehabs are mental institutions, and my best thinking got me into a mental institution. But during that period of time, I really learned new tools for how to live and how to deal with my emotions and how to kind of interact with the world, et cetera. And when I got out of that and sort of went back into, the world, it was all about trying to repair all the wreckage that I had caused as a result of my drinking and using. And so I was kind of on turbo to repair my professional career and my relationships, and as a result of working a solid program in recovery, I was able to do that. But during that period of time, which was a good decade, I overlooked my health and my fitness. And I was a senior associate on the partnership track in this law firm, and just kind of blindly propelling myself forward in pursuit of this American dream that my whole life was kind of founded upon, which is study hard, get into the right schools, get the good job, climb the corporate ladder, work hard, go the extra mile, and all that kind of stuff. And if you do that, you'll be happy. And when I was 39 years old, I was 50 pounds overweight. I was subsisting on what a friend of mine calls the window diet. If you can roll down your window and they hand it to you, you eat it. And, cheeseburgers, French fries, Pizza Hut, Taco Bell, Jack in the Box, and, all that kind of stuff was pretty much, how I was living on a daily basis. And, meanwhile, I started to have this existential crisis of being really unhappy in my chosen career. I'd sort of done all the right things and was experiencing the success of that, but inside I was dying. I felt like I was living someone else's life, like I was trapped in, an existence that I didn't even really feel like I consciously chose, and I couldn't see my way out of it. And Henry David Thoreau captures it best when he said, "The mass of men lead lives of quiet desperation, and what is considered resignation is confirmed desperation." And that was certainly, true in my life at that time. And when I was 39, like shortly before I turned 40, I had worked late. I remember very vividly, and my family was asleep when I got home, and I sort of made my way up the staircase to go to sleep. And I had to pause halfway up the staircase, a simple flight of stairs. I was winded. I was out of breath. I had sweat on my brow. I was buckled over and tightness in my chest. And it was a scary moment. I thought that I quite possibly might be having a heart attack. And, I had been a swimmer at Stanford. I competed on, arguably the best swim team in the world at the time. We had Olympic gold medalists and American record holders. We won NC2As 2 years in a row. And I'd always kind of looked at myself in the mirror and saw that kind of champion swimmer reflected back at me. But, I wasn't able to see myself as I really was, which was kind of a overweight, middle-aged guy who, really wasn't taking care of himself. And so that moment, really everything kind of came into crystal focus. Like I knew that I had to change my ways. I needed to change the way that I was living my life. And those changes needed to be immediate, they needed to be drastic, and they needed to be specific. And I was able to recognize the power of this moment because it was similar to that moment that I woke up that day and realized that I needed to get sober. And I was able to understand that those moments, which I think we all experience in some form or another, have the power to completely and radically change the trajectory of our lives if we're able to recognize them for what they are. And I was blessed to be able to see and understand that this was one of those moments. And I took it seriously. And that's kind of what set in motion this, complete overhaul of how I was living my life. And like I said, it took a number of years. It wasn't like I quit my law practice overnight. I stumbled into adopting a plant-based diet, and that, revitalized me in a way I couldn't possibly imagine. And I had so much energy as a result of that. It fueled an interest in getting fit once again, which was something I hadn't been interested in a good, 15 years. And one thing led to another. And, I ended up participating in these insane ultra long distance events in my 40s and competing, at a very high level and succeeding at that. And that, resulted in media attention, and that led to the book deal. And the book deal was, the sort of catalyst that allowed me to finally kind of step out of being a lawyer and into kind of what I'm doing now, which is essentially a full-time, wellness advocate in a variety of forms.
Yeah. And, I want to talk about when you left law and moved into what you're doing now. You say how it wasn't overnight, and I can totally appreciate that. And I think most people out there understand that there's really no such thing as an overnight success, but many people are stuck in some way, whether it be a job, a relationship, an emotion, and it's hard to take those first steps, that follow through. I think a lot of people have that moment of clarity, but then they don't act on it. So what would your advice be to those people that have that or feel like they're stuck? How do they get out of it before it puts them in rehab or other things that can really take their toll?
Sure. I mean, I think, in my experience, there's a couple of things. And the first thing that I would say is that mood follows action, right? And if you wait until you sort of feel like doing something, then you're probably never going to do it. But if you want to change the way you feel or your emotional state or your physical state, you have to take the action first. And that's always worked for me. And, when I get into that headspace of, I'll go, do my run when I feel better, or I'll get to that when, I don't feel so tired or depressed. That is just sort of, protracting, something that may not ever occur. And so I've gotten into the habit of just shutting off the brain, which is not always your friend, and taking the action anyway. And I think it's about recognizing the sort of distinction between your higher consciousness and your thinking mind, and understanding that the thoughts, or the sort of, kind of repetitive, things that run through your conscious mind don't necessarily define who you are, and that you have a choice whether to listen to those messages or entertain a different possibility. Mm-hmm. The other thing I would say is that it's important to just begin, and you don't have to know where it's leading you. I think it's important to have goals, and it's important to have a plan and kind of know where you're heading, but it's also not required or mandatory. When I first put on a pair of running shoes, when I was age 40, and I had no idea that I was going to become an ultra endurance athlete, competing on the world stage. I just wanted to go outside and connect with my body in a way that I hadn't in a long time. And that provided me with joy. It was something that I enjoyed doing. I was connecting to something that in a very childlike way was, something that I had always, kind of loved as long as I could remember. But when we become adults, that becomes something that, we're not permitted to kind of indulge in anymore. And so everything that's kind of happened in my life, from the success of my book and my podcast and kind of this position that I'm in right now, I could have never predicted in a million years. And it's not the result of some grand plan that I set in motion to try to achieve. It was a result of following my heart, doing the inside work, trying to understand what gives me a heartbeat, what I'm passionate about, and having the faith and the courage to follow that thread, even when it defied logic or didn't make sense, or I didn't know or have any idea, for that matter, where it would take me. It was just about taking the action day by day, consistent pressure, engaging in what it is that you love to do and feel compelled to express more fully in your life.
Now for a quick message from our sponsor. The Smart People Podcast is supported by Wealthfront, the automated investment service that makes it easy to invest your money the right way. Wealthfront software manages your money using investment strategies that were previously only available to the wealthiest investors for just 1/4 of the cost of using a traditional advisor. Wealthfront monitors your account 24/7, automatically rebalancing your portfolio, reinvesting dividends, and working to maximize your after-tax returns. Wealthfront is also overseen by a team of investment experts, the same experts who launched the index fund revolution and who've written some of the most important books in finance. In case you're still not convinced, you should know that Wealthfront manages over $2 billion, with a B, dollars in client assets and has saved millions of dollars on taxes for its clients. So with Wealthfront watching over your investments every day, what will you do with all your extra time? Visit wealthfront.com/smartpeople to get your first $10,000 managed for free. Again, that's wealthfront.com/smartpeople. Get your first 10 grand managed for free. Wealthfront Inc. is an SEC registered investment advisor. Brokerage services are offered through Wealthfront Brokerage Corporation, member FINRA and SIPC. This is not a solicitation to buy or sell securities. Investing in securities involves risk, and there is the possibility of losing money. Past performance is no guarantee of future results. Please visit wealthfront.com to read their full disclosure. Now back to our show in normal speed.
Well, and that's a perfect sequitur into one of your blog posts, The Art of Living with Purpose. It was fantastic, but there was a part in there that really spoke to me for a number of reasons. And it's this idea that, okay, people could look, at your story and say, well, he was a lawyer, he probably had money, or whatever, it probably wasn't as difficult. But you had this one little paragraph, and I'm going to read it. It says, broken married with 4 kids. 4 kids. I can't first of all, just the responsibility, but broken married with 4 kids, I spent countless hours pedaling a bike, running ridiculous distances, or staring at a black line at the bottom of a pool looking for answers as I trained for the ludicrous endurance test known as the Ultraman World Championships. It wasn't just illogical, it was utterly baffling. And yet deep in the recesses of my soul, I knew with every aspect of my being that it was what I was meant to be doing. And that right there, it doesn't make sense. There's no reason you should have been doing what you were doing at that point. I know what that's like. You have responsibility. You don't have money. You don't know what you're doing or why you're doing it. But the key is you were just doing what your body told you to.
Right.
How did you give yourself the ability? How did you allow yourself to do that and just say, fine, I'm going to go with it?
It was, it took a lot, it took a lot of courage, I have to say. It required me to live in the moment and live in faith and be tested in a way that I never have been in my entire life. And when I look back on it, I can't even believe that I did it myself. And it sort of reminds me of that movie, Close Encounters of the Third Kind, where Richard Dreyfuss is starting to lose his mind and he's sort of building Devil's Mountain on his kitchen table and everyone thinks he's insane, but he's compelled to do it. And he, on some unconscious level, knows that it's leading him in some direction that he's meant to go. And I relate to that. That's how I felt. Like it wasn't logical. I had plenty of people around me thinking that I was, chasing a fool's errand and that what I was doing was crazy. And I had no concept of where it would lead me, and certainly no idea that it would ever sort of create a foundation for a new career. I just felt that it was almost like a survival instinct. Like I needed to do it in order to breathe in and breathe out and live. And, again, it was sort of an outgrowth of this existential crisis that I was having, trying to figure out what it was that I wanted to do with my life, and understanding that practicing law was not, that was not going to be my legacy. But what was going to be my legacy? Where was I going to put all of my energy, and how was I going to provide for my family? And in order to answer those questions for myself, I almost felt like I had to put myself into that level of kind of physical, mental, and emotional pain that comes with endurance training, to kind of quiet my thinking mind and allow, my higher consciousness to sort of develop and speak to me in a new and different way. And I was open to the possibilities, and it was scary, and I had the good fortune of having a wife who encouraged me. And even when things looked quite dire, and I can tell you that, we almost lost our house. It was not pretty. For a while we didn't have a car. I mean, it was craziness. That on every logical level, I would wake up and say, I got to go back to the law firm. What am I doing? This is ridiculous. And my wife would say, you need to go out and ride your bike. I don't know why, but there's something about what you're doing right now that I can tell and I can see in your soul that this is what you're supposed to be doing today. And the results will, they will show themselves to us in due time. And, I doubted that many, many times, but I acted as if anyway. And, what she said proved to be true, which was that, if you find a way to engage with your passion, that the universe will indeed conspire to support that. And it may not, that doesn't mean, like I've written in my post, that you're going to get a book deal, or you're going to be financially successful, or that even your peers will respect you, but you will be doing something that is personally meaningful for you. And I feel strongly that we need more of that in this world.
I completely agree. And one of the things you've said a number of times is do the inside work, which I am a huge believer in. It's one of the reasons why I do this podcast and I write, is because not only for myself, but for others, I feel like, it's probably my fault, but when I was younger, I didn't do the inside work. I didn't look at college as that time or soon after college. It was kind of, let's party and then let's get a high-paying job. So one of the things, not only do I want to tell people to do the inside work, but how to do it. Take one step or two steps, because it's tough, right? It's easy to say, learn about yourself. It's tough to say, here's how. What are a couple of examples or pieces of advice on how to do that inside work?
Sure. I mean, that's a great line of questioning. The inside work is not sexy, and it's not fun. And I still resist it, even though that I know in my heart of hearts when I do it, my life gets better. And it's an amorphous thing. It's not like a to-do list, but if I could sort of convey a couple helpful things that have been instrumental in helping me learn more about myself and what I want to do with my life, it would be two things. And the first thing is meditation. There's all different kinds of forms and techniques of meditation. There's plenty of resources online, but I think it's really important to take time with yourself in the morning, and if possible, also at night for, it could be 5 minutes to begin with and, work your way up to 20 minutes to really develop tools to quiet your mind and control your mind and learn how to get the upper hand over your thinking mind. And again, it goes back to this distinction that I referenced earlier about distinguishing between the repetitive thoughts that cycle in your head and kind of your higher consciousness, and understanding that those two things are not the same thing. And meditation is an incredibly powerful, transformative tool that will allow you to kind of tap into and discover, what it is that is missing in your life or what you want to express more deeply. And the second thing I would say is journaling. And I learned this when I read a book called The Artist's Way by Julia Cameron, and she sets out a program to help you unlock your creativity. And kind of there's a number of sort of tools in her toolbox, but the one that's been most powerful for me is what's called morning pages, which is, in the morning, every morning after your meditation, to sit down and write out 3 pages in longhand in a notebook, not on your typewriter, not on your typewriter, your laptop, not with a keyboard, but actually with a pen and in a notebook. And to write whatever is on your mind, even if what's on your mind is, I don't have anything to say, or I hate journaling, or whatever. The process of doing that frees up your subconscious and allows your kind of higher self to express itself in a certain way. And the repetitive kind of consistent practice of doing that in conjunction with meditation has been very helpful to me. And I would say that in my own personal case, the endurance training that I do is really a form of active meditation. When I'm out on a trail by myself or out on my bike for many, many hours, that's a lot of time to be alone, to kind of, connect with yourself physically, mentally, and emotionally and spiritually, that has helped, unlock kind of, a different aspect of who I am.
And I also want to talk about the thing that I mentioned when we first started chatting was the post you wrote called Why You Should Stop Life Hacking and Invest in the Journey. Mm-hmm. And I love that for so many reasons. One, because I am not a huge tech advocate. I don't read a ton of blogs. I don't do a ton of stuff on the computer. It's just not my thing. And so I get frustrated when other people, all they want to do is regurgitate all the things. Hey, do you use this app? Have you set your life on, up on this alarm? And I couldn't say it as eloquently as you did in that post, but what kind of gave you that, man, I need to put this out there because I'm noticing it. Everything's a hack and it's driving me nuts.
Yeah. I mean, I was going insane, and, I'm all for finding efficiencies in your life, and I'm all for, trying to figure out what's not serving you so that you can spend more time engaged in the things that do serve you. But it really struck me, that this meme, this sort of hack culture that we found ourselves in had taken on a different tenor. And that tenor is that the hack had become the end in and of itself, in that if you go on Twitter, you go on Facebook, or wherever, everybody's talking about hack this, hack that, how to hack your sleep, how to hack, and it's this obsession, and it's driven by, if I use this term, I'll get more page views, or I'll get more likes on my page, or more people will read my blog post or listen to my podcast. And I just found it to be very cheap and disingenuous and unauthentic. And I got so annoyed with it that I had to express myself. And, I'm a big fan of guys like Tim Ferriss who, kind of pioneered or kind of popularized the idea of hacks. And I've certainly implemented them certain hacks in my life, I guess if you could call them that, to, kind of make my day more efficient. But for me, I don't understand this obsession with the hack. The obsession should really be about what you're going to be doing with the time that's freed up as a result of the efficiency or the good idea, because I think hack is really just a euphemism for a good idea. What you're going to be doing with that, freed up energy and time. And no one really wants to talk about that, but that's the part that everybody should be focusing on. And the value, what I said in the post is essentially that everybody gets so excited about these hacks, but really the true value of any experience comes in, is directly proportional to the extent to which you're emotionally invested in it. And if you hack your way through training for a marathon, like, hey, I did a marathon, I only trained, for 20 minutes a day and I got through it. Well, that's great, but it's like a parlor trick. And how did you feel when you finished that marathon? Did you feel a sense of satisfaction? Probably not, because that true sense of satisfaction comes when you cross that finish line knowing that you did everything in your power to be the best that you could be. And, the value, in other words, is in the experience and the journey of getting there. And every kind of success that I've had in my life isn't about how I got there more quickly. It's really about, the challenges and the obstacles that I overcame. And I don't think about finish lines or, what my time was in a race or what place I got or where I was when, my book, did hit #1 in a certain category on Amazon. I remember, staying up all night writing my book at the all-night Kinko's next to the homeless guy who smelled horrible. And I remember, that run that I couldn't get through that, caused me more pain than I could have ever imagined. And I was questioning whether I was ever going to be able to compete at Ultraman. And it's those memories that really gild, the experience with a lot of, depth and meaning, personal meaning for me. And the idea of trying to shortcut that really, I think, is missing the entire point.
We'll be right back to this interview after a quick word from our sponsors. Building a website can be tough, and even if you do know your way around coding, creating something that looks good and works well is a time-consuming affair. Whether it's for a business site, a portfolio, a restaurant, or whatever else, in this day and age, you probably need one anyway. Well, lucky for us, Squarespace makes it easy to build beautiful websites without breaking a sweat. Squarespace provides simple, powerful, and beautiful websites that look professionally designed regardless of skill level, no coding required. Not only does Squarespace provide you with intuitive and easy-to-use tools to create your website with, Squarespace also has state-of-the-art technology powering your site to ensure security and stability. And you can trust in Squarespace for your website needs when millions of people and some of the most respected brands in the world trust in them too. Listen, you don't want to have to spend your time learning how to code and build websites. You want to spend your time with coming up with those ideas and being able to execute on them. Let Squarespace make it easy for you to get those ideas out there. Seriously, you can't beat the ease and simplicity of Squarespace. Squarespace gives you 24/7 online support and a beautiful website for only $8 a month. You can even get a free domain if you buy Squarespace for the year. So what are you waiting for? Start a trial with no credit card required and start building your website today. When you decide to sign up for Squarespace, make sure to use the offer code SMART to get 10% off your first purchase and to show your support for Smart People Podcast. So don't forget, use the offer code SMART at checkout. We thank Squarespace for their support of Smart People Podcast. Squarespace. Build it beautiful. And now back to the show.
Yeah, it's really interesting, especially that you brought up the thing about you don't think about finish lines, that's totally hack culture, right? It's just get to the end as fast as possible. Mm-hmm. And I recently interviewed Joe DeSena, who he founded Spartan Races, but also we were talking about the death race. And that has its own crazy aspects to it. But the one thing I really liked, he said, you don't know when you're going to start and you don't know when you're going to finish because life doesn't tell you that. Life doesn't give you an end. It just ends for the most part. And so you need to be okay with the journey, and that's what he was trying to teach people. And we've gotten so much towards this goal-oriented culture. There's an end to everything, and that's not true.
Right. And yeah, I love what he said about that. And it is so true. And certainly, you kind of have to have, a goal in mind to kind of propel you forward or get you out of bed in the morning. And goals certainly serve me, but not at the behest of the journey. It's really about engaging in process, irrespective of the outcome. You have to be completely immersed in what you're doing on a day-to-day basis and love the journey of getting there and embrace that. It's sort of the example I always use is if you're building a house and you just want it to be done so that you can move in, you're going to really resent the process because the contractor is not going to show up and it's going to go over budget and they're going to screw up the stucco and there's going to be all these problems and there's going to be all these delays and it's going to make you insane. But if you engage in the process and really embrace the idea that this is going to be an adventure and a journey and it's going to have its blemishes and problems and setbacks, but understanding that that's just part of the whole thing, then you can actually really enjoy, the year or two that it's going to take for that to happen. And getting a house at the end of it is just icing on the cake. But when you think back, and we had this experience because we built our house, I think back on it and I don't remember the day that we moved into the house that we built, but I remember so many days of just, being on site, to see, the wood go up or the foundation getting poured and what we did that day when, something went wrong and we had to, reconfigure or we thought we weren't going to be able to pay for this or that. And, that's really what I reflect back on with the most kind of joy and I don't know, meaning, I guess, again.
Yeah. No, I love that analogy. That really is one of the things I've learned over 150 interviews, and I'm synthesizing a lot of things I learned. Analogies are some of the best ways to get a point across. And that one is fantastic. I'm sure it hits home for a lot of people. I know specifically, I recently fixed my garage door. And I don't mean a small part. I mean like the whole damn door. And it cost me I think 1/20th of what I got a quote. And I did it myself. I've never done anything like it. I did it by reading or, watching YouTube videos. And it took about 4 trips to Home Depot, just a pain in the ass. I mean, right. I was filing down metal. Like, I didn't know what I was doing. But I fixed it. And I walked in the house and I just started screaming. I was like so happy, And my fiance was like, "What the hell is wrong with you?" I just said, I am a man. Like, this was incredible. And not once did I get frustrated with it. I just said, I'm going to go in the garage for an hour and I'm going to work, and I'm going to learn and I'm going to get dirty. And you're right. Like, it just, if I would have said, if I don't fix this in 2 hours, I'm going to be pissed, I would have been miserable. And I think,
also, the hack would have been to outsource that job. Hacking is all about outsourcing, right?
Yeah.
And so, but what do you gain when you do that? You don't grow. And I think, we have this idea that we can be on cruise control with our personal growth. But the truth is, in every given moment, with every choice that we make, we're either growing or we're regressing. And you chose to, sort of embrace that process as a growth opportunity to, kind of, learn something about how to do something that you didn't know how to do. You got out of your comfort zone. And if you want to grow, you have to get dirty, and our culture, and part of the reason that, part of what motivated me to write that post is, our culture does not encourage that anymore. We're always trying to seek out comfort and the easy way. And we celebrate that when in truth, we should be celebrating or encouraging kind of the hard path, because that's really how you, develop new skills and get out of your comfort zone and learn something new and grow interpersonally.
Absolutely. Real quick, I don't even know if I don't have to air this, but I was just wondering, honestly, your writing is incredible. I mean, it's really, really good.
Thank you.
Absolutely. I was wondering, how long does it take you to write your average post?
Those, it comes in spurts. Like, I wish I could write a post every week, but
Right.
I have to be pretty inspired to do it.
Sure.
And then what happens is I'll sit down and I'll bang out a draft, and then I'll rewrite it over the course of a week. So I
Okay.
probably rewrote both of those posts 10, 15 times
Okay.
before I had them the way that I wanted them.
Yeah.
They're not quick.
Yeah.
I put a lot of time and effort into that.
I just wanted to make sure that was the case because I recently started writing and people have been very kind and they're like, this is great. But I mean, it takes forever. And I was like, am I just striving for perfection or what's going on? But the more people I talk to, it seems the norm to kind of draft.
Unless you're
and
like a
rewrite.
genius like James Altucher. I don't know if you read his blog,
I
but
don't.
I had him on my podcast recently. You should check out his blog, jamesaltucher.com. He
Absolutely.
writes some of the greatest, most hilarious posts, and he literally puts, a new one up every day. And I have no idea how he can churn out such high quality
Wow.
writing on a daily basis. But, he has a consistent practice where every morning he gets up and he writes. That's basically what he does. Like it's his job.
Wow. I can't wait to dive into that. I'm going to look into that. I know we're running out of time. Last question I have for you is, in your specific mindset and from everything you know, in your opinion, what does it mean to thrive?
That's a great question. I think to thrive means to be fully engaged in what you're passionate about and finding a way to express that in your life that is not just in service to yourself and what, makes your heart beat harder, to quote from my post, but also which is in service to others. And, not everybody can be, it's easy to kind of throw that out. And the truth is not everybody can be LeBron James. I'm not saying that everybody is going to be innately, supremely gifted at anything, but I think if you do the interior work that we talked about, that you will discover and find that there is something that you could be passionate about. And it could be something as simple as, basket weaving or playing the banjo or maybe becoming a stand-up comic. And that doesn't mean that you need to quit your job overnight, but that you need to find a way to tap into that and find a way to express that in your life in some form or another and give that energy. And I think that when you're doing that, and the more that you do that, the more that you are thriving. And to the extent that you can, create a way for that passion to also be helpful to others in their journey, I think is the key to truly thriving. Because thriving really is directly proportionate to the extent to which you're giving back.
Absolutely. Well, I love that summation of it. I completely agree. As we kind of mentioned, I know richroll.com is your site. It's incredible. The writing's great. I encourage everybody to check out the blog and your book, Finding Ultra, bestseller, motivational. Where else? I mean, is there anywhere else or that you would like to guide the listeners or places they can check you out or things that you got going on?
Yeah, I mean, everything is happening at richroll.com, RICHROLL.com. My podcast, you can find it there, but you can also find it on iTunes. It's just the Rich Roll Podcast. And you can follow me on Twitter and Instagram. It's at Rich Roll at both. And if you're interested in plant-based nutrition, I have an online course that's available at Mind Body Green. And I'm just about, in a couple weeks, I have a new online course that's launching that's really on the subject we've been talking about today, which is how to live with more purpose, how to set and achieve a goal, but really how to unlock greater authenticity in your life. And I think that's coming out in maybe 2 or 3 weeks, and that's at mindbodygreen.com.
Mind Body Green. I love that site, actually.
Mm-hmm.
One thing that made me think of, and again, this doesn't have to air, but what have you found? Because you've gotten a big following. I mean, pretty quickly from when you kind of switched into this role. Have you found anything that was like, man, this really boosted me in this realm?
That's a great question. I think that the true answer is that it's happened extremely gradually and organically. Mm-hmm. And, I'm not big on tricks and hacks to try to get more followers. And everything that I do begins and ends with trying to be as authentic as possible. And I think that, that's what I express in my book. That's what I express in my podcast. And that's why people kind of tune into me. Mm-hmm. And so I'm very conscious and aware to, not kind of, verge into this, world of internet marketing with, sort of, buy now arrows and all that kind of stuff and all those kinds of things that a lot of entrepreneurs use very successfully to build their audiences and their followings. I've just never really felt like that was the right fit for me. And so, I was a pretty early adopter on Twitter, and it's just kind of grown very gradually. I mean, certainly, when some kind of mainstream media comes out, then I'll get a big bump, like I was on CNN and I did the Joe Rogan podcast and I did a Reddit AMA that was on the homepage of Reddit for like a whole day. And, certain things like that certainly, kind of exponentially, grow your audience. But beyond that, I just try to continually put out consistently solid, helpful content. And I don't really ask for anything back. I'm just trying to be of service, and I'm trying to be honest and open and vulnerable and authentic. And the more that I do that, I think that, all of the kind of social media stuff takes care of itself. And I think the thing that I've experienced with that is I have a decent sized following. It's not tremendously enormous, but I have a lot of engagement, so like when I tweet something, I don't know what I have, 28,000 Twitter followers, other people that have that number of followers, they'll throw something out there and it doesn't get any traction. And when I put something out, I think about how it can be helpful, and I generally get, quite a bit of traction and engagement. So I know that my audience and my followers are engaged in what I'm doing. And I think that's much more important than the number of people that you have following you.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I really appreciate it. Thank you for taking time. I know you're busy with all the things you have going on. I truly resonate with this. The things about authenticity, I just love it. I knew it from, when I started reading your stuff, this guy just really believes it. And it's hard to find. I mean, there's a lot of people out there who are just trying to make a buck or sell content. And so I appreciate it. I love what you're doing. And I can't wait to air this. I'll definitely shoot you the link and let you know when it all goes up.
All right, man. Well, that's exciting. I appreciate you taking a stab with me and having me on, Chris.
Absolutely, Rich. Thanks again, and have a great rest of your day.
All right, you too. Thanks, Chris.
All righty.
Talk to you later.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Welcome back. I hope you enjoyed that episode with Rich Roll. Please don't forget that you can find his book, Finding Ultra, Rejecting Middle Age, Becoming One of the World's Fittest Men, and Discovering Myself on Amazon or at your local bookstore. And if you do choose to purchase the book through Amazon, please do not forget to use our link, smartpeoplepodcast.com/Amazon. If you'd like to reach out to the show, please shoot us an email at smartpeoplepodcast@gmail.com or message us on Twitter @smartpeoplepod or find us on Facebook, facebook.com/smartpeoplepodcast. If you get the chance, please tell one of your friends about our show. Pick out one of your favorite episodes, email it to them, tweet it to them. Just go ahead and do whatever it takes to introduce them to the show. We'll greatly appreciate that. If this is your first time listening to Smart People Podcast, thank you and welcome to the Smart People Podcast community. One thing that I do ask is that you head over to iTunes or Stitcher and leave a rating and review of the show. Let us know what you think. We really do love receiving feedback from listeners. Make sure you stay tuned. We've got some great episodes coming up, and we will see you all next week.